Welcome to this deep dive. Today we are looking at a fundamental shift in the market, specifically a capital allocation thesis regarding the structural migration of leverage in an AI-native economy.
And it is a crucial time to unpack this.
It really is. For those of you listening, if you've been tracking U.S. tech equities, you know that earlier this year, the software market experienced a violent correction.
A massive repricing event.
Right. Depending on the index you follow, we are talking about roughly $1 trillion in value completely erased in a matter of weeks.
And the headlines were immediate.
You were panicked.
Very panicked. The prevailing narrative you saw everywhere was
the AI bubble had burst.
Exactly. Or that the capital expenditure was just way too high relative to the revenue being generated. That was the classic reaction to a market shock.
But the thesis we're examining today, which draws on some really high signal macro analysis, argues that the headlines actually got it backward.
They missed the mechanics of what was actually happening.
Right. This repricing didn't happen because AI failed. It happened because AI succeeded.
Which is a highly counterintuitive take.
Usually when a technology works, when it succeeds, the companies building it see their valuations go up, not down.
Right. But the argument here is fundamentally about scarcity. It's about where value accrues when a historical constraint is removed.
But let's break that down for the listeners. If foundational models are succeeding, if they are expanding capabilities and compressing the marginal cost of software creation to near zero, then execution is no longer the scarce resource.
Precisely. In economics, when a resource becomes abundant, its value collapses.
The premium disappears.
Exactly. That is what the market repriced. For the last 20 years, the constraint was the code itself.
It was hard to build.
Hard to build, expensive to hire the engineer, so the leverage naturally sat with the SaaS companies that owned that proprietary application logic.
But today, software logic is effectively infinite. You can generate it, scale it, extend it at accelerating speeds.
So the trillion-dollar question, literally a trillion-dollar question, is this. If execution is free, or at least trending towards zero, where does the leverage accumulate?
If you can't charge a premium for the code anymore, where do you charge the premium?
You look at the history of technological shifts. Leverage always accumulates at coordination points.
Coordination points.
Right. The places where complexity is reduced, where intent is interpreted, and where outcomes are directed. We are moving from the layer of execution to the layer of coordination.
Let's define that coordination layer a bit more clearly because it can sound a bit abstract.
Sure.
What are we actually talking about when we say coordination in this context?
It is the semantic entry point. It is the exact place where the user states their intent.
Okay.
Historically, the value was in how the work got done, the back-end logic, the database schema. Now, the value is in the request itself and how that request is routed. We are shifting from an economy defined by inputs to one defined by delegation.
Delegation. That is the exact key word the source material keeps circling back to. It makes the case that this isn't just some back-end infrastructure change. It is a fundamental tactical shift in user interaction.
It is the shift from forms to expressive intent.
Right. And for you listening, think about how you interact with software today. For 30 years, we've been conditioned to do it in a very rigid way.
Highly rigid. Forms, drop-downs, checkboxes, keyword entry.
We all do it.
Yeah.
You go to a travel site, you click a tiny calendar widget to select your dates, you pick 2 adults from a drop-down menu, you type a city name into a box.
And why do we do that?
Because the machine needs it that way.
Exactly. We did it to structure our data for the machine's benefit. The computer couldn't understand the nuance of natural human language, so we were forced to speak in database fields.
We adapted to the machine.
Right. But AI native systems flip that constraint entirely. We are moving to a model of expressive intent, where you provide unstructured natural language context.
And this brings us to the economic argument, which I really want to drill into here. It is all about signal density.
Density is the metric that matters now.
Because when you select 2 adults in a drop-down, the signal is incredibly thin.
Very thin. The software knows how many people are coming, sure, but it knows absolutely nothing about who they are, why they are traveling, what the specific dynamics of that trip need to be.
But if you just speak freely, if you use natural language and say, my wife and I need a weekend break from the kids, we want a quiet hotel with a great wine list and absolute zero noise.
The density of that signal is orders of magnitude higher.
Right. I see the utility for the user. It is obviously a much better, more natural experience.
Mm-hmm.
But explain the economic leverage for the allocators listening. Why does signal density translate to capital accumulation for the platform?
Because density allows for delegation. Look at the old model. The user had to bridge the gap between their intent and the actual result. You ran the search, you filtered the results, you read the reviews, you compared the prices.
You did the coordination work.
You did the work. But in a high-density model, the system understands the full context instantly, and it performs the work for you. Whoever owns the interface that accepts that dense signal, they own the allocation of the transaction.
They aren't just a search engine anymore.
No, they are the broker. They control the routing.
Let's ground this with a concrete example. Abstract concepts like expressive delegation are great, but the mechanics reveal the real value. The source material provides this highly specific scenario, the Michael moving to Denver example.
The relocation scenario. Yes, this is crucial for understanding the underwriting value of this new model.
It illustrates the arbitrage between the old world and the new world perfectly. So let's look at the old world version first. Michael is moving to Denver. He needs car insurance. What does that process look like today?
He goes to a search engine. He types car insurance Denver,
Which is a very low density signal.
Right. And what happens? He gets 10 blue links. He clicks on 3 of them. He fills out 3 different forms on 3 different sites, manually typing in his VIN number, his address, his driving history.
And then he gets 3 quotes that are almost impossible to compare because the deductibles and coverage limits all vary.
Exactly. Michael is doing all the coordination. He is the router in that scenario.
It's high friction, low accuracy. Now, contrast that with the new world, the expressive delegation model. Michael doesn't type keywords. He just speaks a narrative paragraph. I'm going to read the prompt directly from the source material here because the specific details really matter for the valuation argument we are building up to.
Go ahead.
So Michael says, my name is Michael Thompson. I'm 41, married, and a U.S. citizen. I'm relocating to Denver. I own a home in Austin that I'm keeping as a rental. I'm a senior product manager earning $165K. I have 3 speeding tickets in the last 3 years. I just bought a 2023 Porsche Macan. I drive about 11,000 miles annually, including mountain trips. I want strong coverage and a well-rated local broker.
Pause right there. Look at the sheer economic value of that single paragraph.
It is staggering when you break it down.
It is everything a broker needs. In one single utterance, he has provided his identity, his asset profile, his income level, his risk exposure.
The speeding tickets are a massive variable there.
A critical variable. He gave his claims history and his behavioral preferences regarding those mountain trips.
In the old world, a standard form might not even ask about mountain driving until the very end of a 20-minute process, if at all. Or it might be buried in a policy document he never actually reads.
Exactly. But in this new model, the system takes that unstructured narrative, clarifies what actually matters, filters out the noise, and routes the outcome. It doesn't just surface the cheapest policy.
No, it finds the policy perfectly tailored for a Porsche driving product manager with a lead foot, who specifically asked for a local relationship.
The system effectively underwrites the user before the insurance company even sees the lead.
Precisely. And that creates immense value across the board. It reduces misallocation because Michael gets the exact right product.
It improves underwriting precision for the insurer because they get a highly qualified, pre-vetted risk profile.
It increases lifetime value. And crucially, it lowers downstream friction. The system handled all the complexity.
So if we accept that this mode of interaction, this expressive delegation, is superior and functionally inevitable, we have to pivot back to the investment thesis.
Right. If the software that processes this request, meaning the LLM itself, is becoming a commoditized execution layer, where exactly is the moat?
That brings us to the emerging signal the thesis focuses on. The source points out a distinct linguistic pattern that is currently surfacing across entirely unrelated industries.
You're talking about the vibe thesis.
Yes. You have professionals and users starting to talk about vibe coding, vibe marketing, vibe design, vibe travel, vibe health.
Okay, I have to play the skeptic here for a moment, because when I, and probably many of our institutional listeners, hear the word vibe, I immediately think of Gen Z slang. I think of TikTok trends. It feels fleeting. Why should a venture capital partner or a strategic acquirer pay any attention to the word vibe as a structural signal?
It is a completely fair reaction. And honestly, I think that is exactly why the opportunity still exists right now, because incumbent players are dismissing it as just slang.
They aren't looking deeper.
Right. You have to strip away the cultural baggage and look purely at the function of the word. Language always evolves to fill utility gaps. And right now, we simply do not have a concise legacy word for delegating a complex outcome based on emotional and contextual preference.
So vibe is stepping in to fill that semantic gap.
Yes. In this specific context, vibe is being used to describe a mode of interaction where the user does not specify rigid, granular requirements.
They aren't saying, give me X, Y, and Z parameters.
No, they're expressing a mood, a feeling, a broad preference. They are effectively saying, I want the final result to feel like this. You figure out the details.
It is the semantic container for expressive delegation.
Think about how other seemingly casual words have stabilized around massive digital behaviors over the last 2 decades. We have search, we have stream, we have swipe.
That's a great point.
In 2005, the word streaming sounded like niche technical jargon.
Or just weird.
Right. But now it is a ubiquitous functional shorthand. When you say, I'm going to stream a movie, literally everyone knows the technical and behavioral process you are engaging in.
You aren't downloading files. You aren't driving to Blockbuster for physical media. You are accessing a continuous feed.
Exactly. And the core argument here is that vibe is becoming that intuitive shorthand for AI native delegation.
That is the container theory. The idea that if AI native behavior expands across all these high-value service industries, insurance, legal, finance, healthcare, the semantic containers that signal this delegation become the natural points for aggregation.
Yes. If vibe is the literal word people use to say, I want to delegate this complex task to an AI, then controlling that word in the market is essentially controlling the door to the coordination layer.
Which brings us to the concept of semantic entry points.
This is where the capital allocation strategy solidifies. The strategic battle in an AI-native economy is not about controlling the code. The code is abundant. The battle is about controlling the entry point into the coordination layer.
It is asymmetry.
A massive asymmetry. If vibe becomes the default behavioral label for expressive delegation, if everyday people start saying, vibe me a travel itinerary, or vibe my insurance options, then possessing the domain namespace, the vibe domains, functions exactly like owning toll booths.
You are comparing it to prime commercial real estate.
I would go even further. I would compare it to core infrastructure. Imagine owning the word search in 1998 or stream in 2005. The ultimate economic value isn't in the back-end technology routing the data. The durable value is in being the exact place the user goes to initiate the action.
Right. If you own insurance.com, that holds traditional value.
Yeah.
But if you own the word that describes how people actually interact with insurance in the AI age, that is exponential leverage.
But we should address the risk variable here.
Yes. What if the word vibe doesn't win? What if the market settles on flow or ask or something else?
That is the primary risk. The entire thesis relies on a linguistic bet. However, the source material makes a compelling case that vibe has already crossed the chasm in terms of broad cultural adoption across multiple verticals.
Why vibe over ask, though?
Because vibe implies feeling. It implies deep personalization. Words like ask or search imply dry, transactional information retrieval. And AI fundamentally is about contextual personalization. Vibe captures that dynamic better than any other monosyllabic word currently in use.
That makes sense. Let's shift to the strategic implications. For the builders listening, the founders, the product executives, the source has a very direct message for them. And honestly, it is somewhat critical of the current product landscape.
Very critical. The message to builders is blunt. Stop optimizing for incremental features. Stop thinking about designing better drop-down menus or slightly faster forms.
If your product still requires the user to do the sorting and the coordinating, you are building a legacy product.
You are polishing the brass on the Titanic. Effectively, yes.
You need to build systems that inherently handle decomposition, routing, and orchestration. You have to design interfaces that accept that messy, unstructured narrative input we saw with Michael's insurance example.
And more importantly, you need to anchor your product to the language that will actually become the shorthand for this behavior. Don't just invent a clever brand name that means nothing structurally. Align yourself with the shift in how people ask for things.
Which naturally leads us to the capital allocators listening, the venture capitalists, the private equity firms. How should they view this vibe thesis? A skeptic might just call this domain speculation.
And the source is very clear on that distinction. Domain speculation is betting that someone someday might want a cute name for a boutique shoe store. That is just gambling.
Right.
This is fundamentally different. This is about evaluating high-signal, cross-vertical semantic assets as actual infrastructure exposure. Infrastructure exposure. That is the key phrase. If you believe the coordination layer is the new aggregation point, then the address of that layer is infrastructure. It is exactly like owning the fiber optic cables or the physical land sitting underneath the data center.
And the source argues that there is a defined window of opportunity here. Early control is currently available. But once these entry points, these semantic containers, are claimed and consolidated by institutional players, they are highly unlikely to reopen at scale.
It creates a classic winner-take-most dynamic on the linguistic layer.
It really does. Because if you own the Vibe namespace across insurance, health, travel, finance, you aren't just holding a portfolio of URLs. You are holding the default gateways for the next generation of service delegation.
That is an asset class that looks a lot more like a regulated utility or a toll road than a traditional tech startup.
Let's zoom out and look at the macro picture again as we wrap up. We started this deep dive talking about $1 trillion wipeout in software equities. We started with the premise that AI is relentlessly compressing execution.
That is the fundamental truth driving all of this. AI did not destroy value in the market. It simply compressed the cost of execution. And compression always forces relocation.
We are watching the center of leverage shift upward. It is moving from the proprietary code that does the work up to the coordination layer that directs the work.
And the source strongly implies that the violent repricing of software we saw earlier this year is likely not finished.
Not even close, right? The public markets are still pricing many SaaS companies as if their application logic is a durable, defensible moat.
If that code is rapidly becoming a commodity, those multiples have to compress further. But while the repricing of the old execution model continues, the relocation of leverage is already visible to those paying attention.
The structure of this new layer is fully implied. We know it will be conversational. We know it will be based on expressive delegation.
The only variable left to solve is who actually controls the containers.
That is the unresolved strategic variable. And that is exactly where the Vibe Domains portfolio comes in. It is described in the source material as a consolidated namespace uniquely aligned with this structural shift.
A single acquisition unit that cleanly represents this new leverage.
It is a fascinating pivot in how we think about tech valuation. We spend so much time analyzing the back-end engines, the LLMs, the GPU clusters, the chip fabrication plants.
But maybe the real alpha isn't in the engine room at all.
Maybe it's at the front door.
In a world of infinite machine intelligence, the only thing that actually matters is human intent. And the most valuable asset you can own is the word that captures that intent.
I want to leave you listening with this final provocative thought. In this new environment, control of the entry point is the primary strategic variable. We know that expressive delegation is coming. In fact, it is already here. The question isn't if it will exist. The question is, when the world fully shifts from searching to vibing, who owns the gateway?
That is the billion-dollar question.
Thanks for joining us for this